The reason Chava is so low right now because he's wearing his Liverpool shirt. Liverpool currently languishing in seventh spot in the Premier League, while Arsenal remains on top. But that aside, Cheesy's here, Chava's here, and let's just get into it like we always do. This podcast was brought about by Cheesy in a group chat in a group chat WhatsApp group, basically pronouncing that Agile is completely incompatible with AI and that the Agile Manifesto does not apply. Obviously, that had a bit of a reaction. And we're going to talk about that today. And so I guess we first have to kind of like align on definitions on what
No,
we're
first,
talking about.
wait. First, I have to address what you said about Liverpool, because right now there's a champ. Right now there's a champ, and then we'll see what happens this year. But right now we're still the champ. So
Yes. Let's go. Let's get back to the Agile Manifesto. So, Cheesy, let's dig into what you first mean by Agile is not compatible with AI, and second, your critique of the Agile Manifesto and why it doesn't apply. And then Chava, I'll let you react to what Cheesy's saying.
Okay, well, let me start with the first question there. And I'm going to kind of define Agile just a little bit first, because as Chava said off camera, there's a lot of people that have different definitions of that. So I'm thinking about the methodologies, whether it be like Scrum, even Kanban or whatever, where we have some kind of a backlog that's prepared by a product owner, that where we move things onto a board. We move things across the board to done, through different phases, whatever it might be, where we have like stand-up meetings in the morning to kind of talk about status, where we have maybe, elaborate, meetings where we try to groom stories, backlogs and things like that. And so a lot of different methodologies kind of fall into that. And I think those have been very valuable in the past, but I don't believe that any of those will work or compatible with where I believe AI not only is now in some cases, but also where I believe it's going. And the reason that I believe that is that they add way too much overhead. Whenever the overhead right now, I mean, even now, I think Scrum adds too much overhead for what we might want to do. But whenever a team is delivering, 20, 30, 40 times as much as they can right now, the overhead becomes completely unbearable, in less time than it would take a product person to kind of build out a story, in whatever tool you want to pick. With AI, it can actually be done, tested, and in production, and the developer can be there twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the next one, and it just doesn't fit at all. This model of especially with as rapid as we're able to move things, and in certain areas right now with the high quality that we're able to achieve, which means again it takes away the testing effort that we would often have, and so I just don't think that and I've thought about all of the methodologies that are out there, but I just don't think that they fit at all, and the truth is that AI is only going to get better, as we go on. In fact, over the last 3, 4, 5 months, it's made significant improvements in just that short amount of time. So that's why I think Agile methodologies are what I mean whenever I say Agile methodologies, and I think they're not really compatible. You asked about the manifesto. Again, I've been a student and teacher of the Agile Manifesto and Agile practices for, a very long time. But whenever I start to think about things like individuals and interactions over process and tools, well, right now, the process and tools in the AI world are what drive us so rapidly. And our teams don't need to be as large. They could be teams of 2 or 3 people. And so the individuals and interactions kind of becomes less, it becomes a kind of an important thing, but whenever we had teams of 8, 10, 12 people, that became the primary thing. Whenever we have smaller teams, because of the pace or the rapid rate at which we're able to do it, the process and tools actually become very, very important as well. Whenever we're talking about working software over comprehensive documentation, With AI, you don't have to make that decision. You can have both. You can have both that is current and up to date all the time. So it's not like I have a trade-off there. Responding to change over following a plan. Well, yeah, I mean, you you know, the idea of the plan often was something that stretched out, weeks or months or days, or quarters or whatever of a year. But today, whenever we're talking about plans, we're talking about, in a week being able to deliver what typically would take a month or two to deliver, historically. So things are changing, and to try to hold on to this old way of working whenever things are changing is just going to add so much overhead, so much complexity that I wouldn't want it based on what I know about AI right now.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Chaba, your first sort of initial reactions to what Cheesy's saying. I'll just speak for like just 20 seconds. I mean, I certainly agree that the team sizes need to get much smaller because I think developer throughput is through the roof. I think people are drastically underestimating how fast developer productivity is. I don't think it's a stretch to say uh, I personally, based on my Claude Code Codex experience,
Mhm.
am about 10 times more productive now and writing much cleaner code at a much faster pace. I'll just give you a personal anecdote. Like I used to be, I mean, I'm talking for Jump Comedy, my little startup. A feature request used to come in. I used to be like, there goes my weekend. And now I'm like, I can finish this after dinner and before I start watching TV. Like that's the level of so this kind of speed burst, Chaba. How do you think this has impacted things? Do you think the manifesto still applies? Do you still think trade-offs still apply that are mentioned in the manifesto? Like, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to approach it a little bit from a different angle, Cheesy. By the way, what you said, I 100% agree with everything what you said. But when we talk about agility, I am thinking about the rapid experimentation, rapid feedback, and that's how I would. That's the when I hear agility, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, right?
Mhm.
And we absolutely can do that with all the tools that you're describing, this experimentation, agility. But I think the way you're describing, I think one element is missing when your description, and that's the call that person whatever you want, product manager, somebody who has the vision, somebody who kind of sets some level of direction. Could be the startup owner, could be, it doesn't matter, some kind of a business person who they can use AI. They can. So I'm not saying that they are like old school, Stone Age kind of people, but there is still an element. Now, how do you incorporate that interaction?
But that doesn't mean agile.
No, I'm not saying it's agile. Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. That for me, I don't want to the stuck to the dogmatic definition of what agility or agile is. And I understand that when people say that word, it comes with all these that you described, like the practices, the umbrella, the Kanban, all the stuff. I'm saying that for me, the spirit of agility, this get quick feedback from your customers, know what your customers need, all that stuff that can enhance and help, like prototyping, all those things that in the past was like a week, like design sprint a week. Now you can do it in a day and get feedback about your stuff, right? So
you can do it in 15 minutes.
Oh, 50, even better. Yeah, exactly. For sure. So that's all I'm trying. I was trying to say.
I think what you're saying, if I can paraphrase, Chaba, and tell me if this is correct or not, is that you still want to have the outcomes that Agile gave, and I agree. Okay, but I don't believe that. So let me give a great example, and this is a journey that I've been on for like the last year or 6 months for sure. I've been heavily into this journey. I'm a huge practitioner of TDD, test-driven development, and I've taught that, and I've paired with developers, and I don't do that with AI. And I had to really step back and say, why am I so rigid? Why do I hold on to this practice so hard? What I really want to achieve is the outcome of that practice. For example, with TDD, we achieve code that's tested and it's well factored. So what if there's another way to achieve that? And there is, I'm discovering. And so I think I agree completely with you in that we want the outcomes, okay, which, by the way, the whole rapid development and fast feedback loops, that wasn't per se agile, that was more lean startup and that's kind of thing, which is a little bit different, but that's okay. It's all the same family. So I want those outcomes, but I'm not going to get it by following an agile methodology in this new world. So we have to separate out the outcomes that we want from how we go about getting it. And what I've been trying to do is think about, okay, well, based on this reality, which, by the way, I'm gonna slice the reality just a little bit, but based on this reality, how do we structure ourselves? How do we work together? If we have a product person, how do we work with them? What does that mean? What does that look like? And let me put a caveat out here. Zorar and I work a lot in Elixir, and Elixir is far ahead of so many other languages in this space. So we're kind of living in the best world possible there, because I'm actually working my day job. I'm doing a lot of Java and a lot of TypeScript, and with AI, with the same tools, and it's not as mature, right? And it makes more mistakes, and it's a little bit more problematic. But the truth is that it will catch up. Okay. And so even though right now I'm seeing how great things can be, I know I'm talking to developers and the people I'm working with every day, they're not seeing it as much because they're working in an old technology and, and it's, they're having some difficulties, but it's going to come. And so to achieve those same outcomes, if we try to do agile, the agile methodologies that are out there, I think will fail. And so what has to happen is we have to think about what's the new version of this, 2.0 version or 3.0 or whatever.
I just wanted to ask you, Cheesy, because it's very interesting what you say about TDD and tests, because even though I still use AI, I still like unit tests. I still write unit testing for my code for a number of reasons. I don't want to go there. So then why? So just curious, what are you replacing unit tests with?
Oh, Claude's writing all the unit tests.
Oh, okay, fine, but you still have that's fair. Okay. So this is what I was going.
My code is more tested than ever.
Okay, good. Okay, so
right. So it's not about that. I mean, in my agents file, I tell Claude every time you write any new code, accompany it with tests. And by the way, each time it also runs static code analysis, it runs security analysis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And so the quality is there much faster, and so it's not about not testing. It's more tested, and then whenever it gets done with all that, guess what? It opens up and tests the app, again, so it's thoroughly tested. And Zorar, I think, is being generous when he says a factor of 10, because I'm seeing that I'll spend 30 minutes and it will produce what normally would have taken me, 4 or 5 days in some cases, and so it's well, so I'm not saying that it's not tested, Java. It is.
Got it. Okay, sorry. I just want to mention that what she said, that for a moment when you said about TDD and dropping, so just dropping the red green refactoring cycle, I guess, in this particular case, Cheesy.
It doesn't make sense. Well,
exactly. I'd even say I think you still. Well, I want to get to I think the part that I think Agile was intended to solve, which is are we developing the right thing? A question. By getting business people and technology and people to actually collaborate. Like, I do want to come back to that point, because I think that problem, that problem still exists. We still have to solve it, but I think the approach to solving it has definitely changed. And I want to come back to that point a little bit just after this. Regarding the red-green refactor, I think the red is now basically like a requirement. Like, you don't have to write a test which depicts the requirement. You can just write the requirement, and that really is your failing test. So there's no point in going to a failing test because you know what you want and you can describe it in English, you describe it in a more human way rather than in a describe it format, which is much, much easier and much, much faster. And you can make mistakes while doing it and the AI will correct it. So you are, and then you obviously generate the code and the tests and you review it and so on. So you still have this sort of red-green refactor. It's just not, it doesn't look like testing. Like testing is actually a side effect really of the human trying to
or
get what
or
they want. So for
or
sure.
maybe our red green refactor is something a little bit different. The red is, like you said, writing it. The green is AI goes out and writes it. And I've learned that I force my AI to take small little steps, right? And then maybe the refactor is that before I commit the code, now I take a look at what it did.
Yeah,
And
and I
if
think
I'm not happy
I
with
find
it, I can
myself sort
probably
of
change something.
I find myself sort of the refactor stage is, of
Mhm.
course, you clean up the code a little bit as much as you can, but also you're like, okay, where did it make mistakes and how can I do better context engineering for next time? So you're basically sort of refactoring your context approach more than you are your code.
Or
Um,
refactor your agents file.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example, which is one of the apps I'm working on. It supports French and English, right? Because we're Canada, right? So I asked it to build out the French translation. It did build everything out, and then the next page that I had to build for the website, it didn't add the French translation. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I jumped into my agents file right away. I said, every time you add a new content that's customer facing text, add a French translation. Boom. And I never had that issue again. So again, it's about, but that's the tools and interaction piece of it a little bit, right? Because now I've kind of continued to inform Claude how I want Claude to behave, right? So
For sure, Shizi. I do think, I think in terms of technical implementation and how people work together, totally, I think it has turned the world upside down. There honestly isn't really a testing phase anymore. I think the product owner writing stories is redundant. I think they should be more or less writing docs, which the developers can generate prompts from. But let me come, and we'll come back to the. I think the main thing I got out of your take, Cheesy, was that the methodologies certainly aren't suited anymore.
mhm.
The 2 weeks, sort of the 1 week sprints are too long. The idea of writing a user story and then like taking it through stages seems overhead.
Mhm.
Testing is now front loaded completely. Team sizes are no longer the pizza sizes. You could have all technology, all developer team and come out just fine. So all that has been sort of disrupted. Totally agree. But coming back to the problem of like, are we building the right thing? Where Agile is supposed to bring people who have a problem to people who are trying to solve the problem and getting them to collaborate. Isn't that the sort of the essence and the core of Agile? And isn't it purposely abstract enough where that problem remains the central one regardless of technology change?
Perhaps. I mean, yeah, I think perhaps it is, but the way that almost every one of these methodologies solve it is again part of that portion of it as well is part of what I'm pushing back against, right? So because we don't take steps in 2 week increments. We don't take steps in 1 week increments. We don't take steps in 1 day increment. We're pushing to we're pushing changes every 10 or 15 minutes, right? And so how does the product person build out enough details in a document, if you will, if you want to go that route, to keep that moving? I personally think it's going to be a lot more like a conversation, and where the product person's also going to be typing prompts, but more. Uh, here's Zarar. Here's something that might make sense to you. Okay. Whereas the developers are running Claude code in like Windsurf, getting boom, boom, and the product owner has Tidewave, and they're looking at the UI, and they're seeing the changes coming out like real time, right? And maybe making tweaks or adjustments there at the same time as the conversation's going. This is again just some of the thought process that I'm going through around what would a methodology look like? How does it look? But yeah, I don't see a document handoff whether it be user stories, which is historically what we've done, or even like a big document. I just don't see that working. I see constant interaction, constant conversation, constant micro tweaks, micro adjustments as the way forward.
Yeah. Chava?
So again, I agree with everything what you just said, but there's one thing that's on my mind, and I'm not sure if you listen, Cheesy, to our previous podcast. I mentioned that I had to help my nephew with like learning some basics in software engineering, right? Among the three of us, and of course, if you talk to any experienced software developer, we know about any software what we picture the end product, right? And we can picture more or less the end product that we are trying to get to. So our prompting, we prompt with these micro steps in that direction to get the product into that direction. But we have this experience because we've done it the hard way, right? We have the experience because we had to build and learn those basic. So for example, I was teaching my nephew about memory allocation, right, in C, right? So we understand how computers work, how the very, very fundamental things of software engineering. And this knowledge helps us to be able to very effective with AI. The question is, so there's just the intro. How can a new person who is go to development get to our level? Because it's very, very seductive for them to start right away with AI.
I think AI is going to do most of that, what you just described, Chaba. I think, to think that this knowledge now that you're describing, that AI won't consume that is I don't agree with that. So I think there is some value to it. I mean, clearly, so the platforms that I'm working on, I know well, and every once in a while, and by the way, it's far less now than it was even like 2 or 3 months ago, but every once in a while, it goes on a tangent, and and I can catch that. Would a junior developer be able to catch that? Maybe not as quickly, okay, but I think it's only a matter of time until that more advanced knowledge that it gains that knowledge as well. So where does that leave us? I don't know. But I don't see that it's going to just go up to a point and stop and say, okay, I'm not going to learn, anything above what maybe a mid-level developer has learned. I won't learn those more advanced things. I think it's going to consume it all.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting area we're playing in right now, because you can make you could have a debate between two people, and somebody could take the position that you don't necessarily need developers, especially if the exponential rate at which these things are getting better. You basically need problems to solve, and if you're good enough, you can do it. However, I do have a bit of a doubt there, because I certainly also think the software engineering core underlying principles are still needed. I mean, I can see Cheesy's point where even those you don't have to worry about. For example, like oftentimes you might get like inefficient implementations or sort of space complexity that is not required. And right now you kind of have to manually fix that, or keep an eye out for it. It would be sort of like foolish for me to take a position and say those problems will not be solved by AI just because they've solved so many problems so far. So I don't see any reason why that one wouldn't also be solved. So if you just sort of like push that line a little bit more and look maybe 6 months or a year into the future, you're looking at a situation where you're describing problems entirely in English at this point, and out is popping a solution. So in that model, if you live in that world where you have to basically describe your software and out pops the software, for sure, what is the point of stand up and all these other sort of things? I mean, I guess you got to meet people, so I guess you got to meet in a stand up. But there are just the idea of a stand up, the fact that it's once a day, and you're getting so much done within that one day. The stand up seems a thing of the past, just because how infrequent you meet.
There's no value that because the touch points have to be not once a day. It has to be every 10 minutes, every 30 minutes, so I just see it as a different thing, right? So yeah, the stand up, I think, so there is this fear, oh my God, is this going to mean the end of software development, software developers? I've thought about that a lot as well. I don't think it is, but not because of AI. I think that it's because of companies. I mean, most companies have not been willing to make the changes necessary to be successful at Agile. I mean, let's be honest, they haven't, right? And the types of changes that it's going to take to be highly successful with AI are greater. For example, there are a lot of companies who are very happy to continue to take from the open source. The OSs that they're running on are open source. The languages are open source. The frameworks are open source, et cetera, et cetera. Their pipeline is open source, et cetera. But historically they haven't been willing to give back. I think that model, that AI is going to bring that to a head, in that these companies are going to have to make decisions around, is our code really proprietary? Is it really something that we have to protect? Is there trade secrets in it? And the overwhelming majority of the time, the answer is no. It's not at all. It's it's basically reading from a database, massaging it, and displaying it, right, or something like that. So, and they're going to have to make decisions to kind of tear those things down in order to truly be successful in this AI world. Because guess what? The AI, those robots want to chew your code up, right? They want to chew it and make it out, and so you got to be willing to do that. Number two, structurally, I mean, so many of the rules that exist in corporations now, or in companies, become that they're not valuable anymore in this new world. And so what does that mean? How do we restructure? What does that mean ultimately? Those are things that aren't determined yet, but my goodness, they haven't been able to do it just so that they can get Scrum right. What makes us think that they're going to go much, much further? Even though maybe the benefit that they'll get from AI is much more immediate and much larger. So I think developers will continue to work, but they'll continue to work in the companies who have decided not to go down this path. Who've decided that, that they're not willing to make the sort of changes necessary to be highly successful in that space.
Yeah, I mean, when this first came out, and you heard like sort of executives giving up hey, we got to be like 10% more efficient. My first reaction to that was 10%. Like,
Yeah.
like, what are you talking about, man? Like, we can get to 50, no problem whatsoever, in a relatively quick manner. So let's switch over to sort of like, I don't know where we landed on is Agile dead because of AI. I think let's just park that. I think Chaba, do you have any final words on this topic?
I think we agreed that Agile, as the how people get to know the process side of it, yes, it is. But why Agile came in the first place, and and you're right, Cheese. It was lean startup and extreme programming, and all those. So those were the predecessors here, right? So, but why Agile? But why there was this need to, we have to do something here because we are like way too slow, way too we cannot respond to demand and get customer feedback. I think that need is still there, and then whatever we want to call it, that principle will live, and probably Agile is a new waterfall. I don't know, maybe. And
Chaba, the manifesto was always too flaky for me. I always loved the principles. They seemed always more weighty and more specific. And I think all those still apply, except the simplicity is the art of maximizing not done, because we generate a lot of code and sometimes it's like a little excess. So you may end up developing features that you don't even necessarily need because it's so easy to develop them. Other than that one, the rest of them I think sort of still apply. So maybe we can leave this conversation at, let's switch from the manifesto and the trade-offs that it's talking about, which Cheesy, as he mentioned, that may no longer apply as stringently as we thought, and shift over to the principles. I think most of which will still apply. Okay, just switching gears a little bit. We're at 30 minutes, so let's do about 10 more minutes. So, we're corporate elephants. We've worked in the corporate world. We've seen some things. So, what are some of the things that are preventing like orgs from actually adapting this? Is it just not realizing it? Is it that it's too jarring of a change to say, let's go down from like a 12-person, 9-person team down to 3, and you don't need to do XYZ activity? What's preventing us from like making this turn that, like, if you're an indie developer or a small company, like, you've already made and you've seen the light,
Mhm.
like, and sometimes I hear like, oh, it's a brownfield project, doesn't apply to brownfield. No, it applies very well to brownfield as well. So what are some of the impediments that we're seeing that is preventing orgs from actually adapting and taking advantage of this speed and
Mhm.
quality?
I think lack of knowledge and awareness is a big one. So I can give some very specific examples though of some things that are happening. So my one of my customers right now has gone through that soul searching and they have kind of for I'm going to say nearly this entire year been dipping their toe in the pool. Oh my goodness, we'll let some developers use windsurf instead of you know instead of IntelliJ or something like that, right? But they ultimately had to kind of come to the decision around, well, some of those decisions that I made around, is our code really proprietary or not? Are we okay to kind of open up the floodgates to these LLMs? And that they finally arrived at the answer of yes, we are okay with that. And so I am in the process of putting together some workshops for them where we're going to actually take an epic from their backlog and we're going to deliver it in this style, in this fashion. And they're looking at it like as a proof of concept. So they've hand selected some developers that they're going to, I say, liberate. In other words, take the corporate constraints off, right? And all of the nervousness around all of the things that comes along with that. But I think once they see this and see, how big of a success this will be, then they're going to have to start to make some of those decisions, start to come to, that answering some of those questions. I think but until they see it, that they don't, right? And by the way, let me step back and also say that there's nothing like the corporations that are out here, a lot of the larger corporations, for building overly complex solutions that are just insanely complex for what they're doing. And by the way, AI does have difficulty with that, and so AI doesn't work the same in every environment. So, I mean, I've worked in an Angular app and, it wasn't structured well. And there was a lot of legacy in there, and AI choked on it. AI had some difficulties, and we had to, really hone in on building out some specific instructions for how we wanted it to work, and it was very, very contextual. So it took a lot of time. Anyway, what's holding them back? I think awareness is a big one.
Chaba, your experience on this front?
Yeah, I think I think the problem is very, very complex because this is so AI is not an industry or software engineering type of impact, right? Well, Agile was typically software development, right? That was your lens and your focus. So this contextually, this group of people practiced or talk about it, right? Now, when AI comes as not as a as for this only for this specific group, but it's a world phenomenon, right?
Mhm.
So because it's a world phenomenon, I think the adoption has a bunch of lens. It can have societal lens, could have personal lens on certain people, and so on and so on and so forth. So I think the leaders or whoever are taking this in, they are on a very, very spectrum on how they look at AI in general from a societal perspective. So that could cloud or not cloud
Mhm.
their judgment. So I think the problem is extremely complex. And I know I'm not giving you a real answer, but I I 100% agree what Cheesy said, and about corporations and then big corporations and all that stuff. But I think we cannot underestimate this societal lens on the adoption, what these people as humans, like outside of the work, what they are experiencing, these company leaders, right? While Agile, they went home and they never cared about it out of the workplace. Now they go home and AI is everywhere, right? So I cannot really put my finger on it, but I hope I was able to articulate it enough to.
Yeah, I think the old, if you remember, the old joke used to be like, you can tell how behind an organization is based on what JDK they're using, right? If it's 5 years out of date, that's like a signal of things. And I think I'll kind of like maybe argue against my own point a little bit and say I think organizations are picking up on AI. Certainly, they're picking up on it faster than they picked up on Agile when it first came out. I think they're picking it up, but it's a very slow curve based on maybe being very cautious and not understanding the technology, like very, very small baby steps. But I think you could even say the initial adoption and acknowledgement that this will impact us and we need to change has already happened. Now, how quickly it's happening, I think smaller companies and indie developers and sort of 3-person companies, they just try too many things and they're going to be like way ahead really fast. So I definitely see a lot of like competition coming against sort of incumbents who've had like solidified market positions. And if they don't adapt, I think before it used to be like, hey, if we don't do Agile, we may face like a competitive threat from the market. And that there was definitely some some weight to that theory. But with AI, it's like if you don't adopt it, you are like you're going to be left behind within a year, right? You don't have a 6-year transformation window to being better. You have a 1-year window where some startup that started like 2 weeks ago is already is feature set complete against you. So it's havoc.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because you can see it even in the startup world that it's throwing the whole thing in like crazy implications, because some of these companies don't even need any investment anymore because they can grow and scale and be on the market without any kind of investor involvement. So which actually shows the and 2-3-person companies technically like that can do that. So
right,
yeah, definitely the implications are there.
I still think a lot of the big companies aren't going to make the transition. I mean, we have a large company here in Toronto that recently announced a 5% layoff because of AI. And 5%, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm not saying that we all should be losing our jobs, but either they're using that to trim fat and blaming AI.
That's what it is.
Or maybe they finally allow developers to use, line completion in their AI, in their editor that based on AI. Wow. So maybe that is a 5% improvement or 10% improvement, but that's not what we're talking about here. And I think that come back to kind of what Zarar was mentioning and Chava, what you also kind of alluded to there. I think that a lot of these big companies that have been too big to fail, that have like bloated workforces that are slow moving, that they haven't had competition just because the entry of, the entry fee was too high for a competitor to try to come in. I think that entry fee has just dropped dramatically, at least as far as it comes to software delivery, software development.
One thing I just want to add to what Cheesy said, that about the organizations. I think that if you would picture the organization as these kind of pyramid structure, right? It in a way it is almost like an existential threat, not only for developers, also for the middle management and then the upper and almost everybody in the organization. Because if you let go, I don't know, 90% of your workforce, then why would you need that many managers? Why would you need that many directors and VPs? And so it's almost like this entire structure is premised on numbers, on high number of employees. And maybe cheesy, the 5% was maybe an internal resistance due to not reducing more, because then why would you need those layers and those structures?
Yeah.
So again, I don't have the right. I don't have an answer here. Like we can speculate. But
I think one thing, like we focused a lot on the sort of the software development, the engineering aspect of things, and how fast it is, and how you can think differently. Maybe we should dedicate a future episode to the idea of like sort of product management and how that has been impacted. Because boy, I mean, doing research is still is now like this. I guess the one thing that I've noticed that hasn't changed is talking to customers. So maybe the product managers who don't talk to customers, like that's a special breed. Maybe this will free up time for them to finally go and spend 50% of their day talking to the people who are paying them money. I certainly have found myself in my little startup life talking to customers a hell of a lot more because actually, let me just pivot here. Cheesy, I'll challenge you on one thing, that one framework which has not one Agile framework, which is, I think, back on the play and is not dead, and if anything has been rejuvenated, is programmer anarchy.
Perhaps, yes.
I think
but
that
nobody would call that Agile per se, right?
Well, so I'm just saying it's part of the Agile, Agile-ish framework. Maybe we come back to the product management topic.
On here someday. We should get Fred George on here someday, and
it'd be great. That would be great. Fred George, the creator of Programmer Anarchy, and I think that would be a good product management discussion as well, because the fundamental idea behind that way of working is to really reduce the distance between the customer and the programmer. And I think with AI, that might be on the trending high now.
Right. I was also thinking possibly a stripped down version of fast might be something that works. But I think fast, even, which in my opinion is the lightest weight agile methodology out there right now, but even that seems to impose too much overhead for what I think is going to happen here. So anyway,
we should probably end there. We're at 42 minutes. We've got a lot of like possible topics for future episodes. So Cheesy, thank you for suggesting the podcast. Chaba, thanks for coming on. And listener, thank you for tuning in after a long time. No promises when the next one will be, but hopefully soon enough. And we'll see you around. Chaba, you want to say something?
I just wanted to add something, guys. If this continues, maybe the AI is going to do our podcast and not us. Who knows? So the next time you see us, maybe it's not us.
I'm not even Zarar. I'm the AI version of Zarar. Zarar's like having dinner over there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
See you guys later.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.